Hey everyone, good to see you. Less good to see what's been happening in certain media lately. You may have heard of the recent strike that voice actors have initiated this year. SAG-AFTRA is an actors union that has gone on strike in the past and is on strike now. The focus is to protect actors from having their likeness used in AI, voice or otherwise, without their consent and not being compensated for its usage. There are several companies who have unfortunately expressed interest in exploring the use of AI in their games. Some specifically for the purpose of replicating human spoken dialogue. Actors are understandably upset at how certain companies have been stubborn to update contracts to protect them, and have thus stopped working altogether until conditions have improved. That's how strikes worked, if you weren't aware. The most recent update for Genshin Impact the other day put into perspective for many people what the implications this strike will now put on the industry. I started the main quest and noticed that Kachina did not have a voice. I thought this was just a goofy error made in the patch, but no, entire lines of dialogue were missing. She was mute. These are the major main quests of the game that are always voiced, mind you. And the kicker is, Paimon is voiced during these scenes. Multiple characters are either voiced or mute in the same scene.
Honestly, if he has the same information as us, I can't really blame him.
We talked to Malika before we left the stadium. According to her, the cost of the captain's plan is too high.
Genshin's voice work is mostly handled primarily by Formosa Interactive, a company who infamously was not paying the voice of Paimon, Karina Botker, among other voice actors for months. This was not the fault of Hoyoverse, by the way. As much as I feel some people want to dunk on Hoyoverse, this was the result of what happened with Formosa, the company that handles the English voice production. Genshin Impact itself had to make a statement that the issue was resolved in time, but it's upsetting that this had to happen in the first place. Karina has since moved to a new studio, partly explaining why their voice is still recorded for the game, and Paimon is kind of also the mascot of Genshin. But Formosa has remained difficult to work with and will not update contracts, affecting several people, and is why SAG-AFTRA is taking action. There are companies out there who see the voices of these actors, and they want to make artificial models of them and not pay them. That's the fear of AI and the very real era that we're just catapulting into, where the assets and skills that we have are just being replicated and used without consent to do jobs that you should be paying people for. There are contracts that have AI protection for actors, and some that unfortunately have wording that make it so that they can tiptoe around and say that it allows the contractor to simulate their voice. This kind of wording is more common in older contracts, but it had a different meaning back then, as you can imagine, since AI did not exist in the capacity that it does today. Joe Zija, a professional voice actor in the field, talks about this in a lot more concise detail in a video that he did a couple months ago on this strike. I do recommend giving that a watch to help understand SAG-AFTRA, this situation, and how strikes in general work. He voices Wriothesley in Genshin Impact, Claude in Fire Emblem Three Houses, he does voiceover classes, he knows what he's talking about. You know who doesn't know what they're talking about? Social media. I know, I ought to know better than to expect more from a place like Twitter, but there's a small snippet of this game that I shared earlier, along with what's happening with some context. And my goodness, the reactions. Some of them were sane, and many others, and a lot of the quote retweets were just bad takes, tone deaf, and filled with people who completely missed the entire point of me posting this. People saying things like, oh, well, better switch over to do dub over sub. Ah, this game is better in Japanese or Chinese anyways. And how dare companies not discipline their workers? What? Just absurd things from people who they don't know what they're looking at or listening to. I did not make this post so that you can unstick yourself from your chair and tell people who enjoy English voices more in their games things like, this is why the original language is better. Like, stop! This is about the livelihood of people that are trying to keep themselves afloat because their art form deserves it. This is about a union of actors that are trying to protect future generations from consuming or being part of media that doesn't consist entirely of artificially molded voices. There is a lot of noise out there, and it's important to know how and where to filter a lot of that out. I am so fortunate to be able to say that I am friends with or have been acquainted with so many voice actors in the field. I have helped to run EmblemCon for the past 5 years now, and have been able to talk with and interview many of them. Greg Chun, Xanthi Huynh, Brittany Cox, Bo Bridgeland, who, bless her heart, has helped me with understanding some of this, and also even helped me when I had my own voice problems earlier this year. Amazing people, wonderful talents, and they have never claimed to own a character. None of them do. In technical terms, a company owns the voice files that an actor creates for said characters, but they do own their voices, not the character voices, the voice of the actor themselves. So shouldn't they be compensated? Right here at GVG, we have our own voice actors. John has been doing more work on the field, most recently with Cat Quest 3. Brandon has been helping not only advertise, but also lend his voice for an indie game, and that's just their most recent gigs. They can only get bigger from here, and thankfully smaller games aren't so much threatened by the use of AI. But there could be a point that being signed on for a game of a bigger company could lead to being replaced or missing out on a gig that you would have had otherwise. In the larger scope of things, the truth is anyone you hear on a podcast, a YouTube video, a game, we can easily be replaced by AI if somebody wishes to throw our voices into a blender. And this whole situation with Genshin Impact is really one of the first major instances that we've witnessed the effects of the strike. Something that Hoyoverse likes to do is have a presentation of all the new things that we'll be seeing in the latest update for their titles. Many times, they'll invite the character voice actors to participate with cute little chibis representing them. That didn't happen last time. Instead, 2 of the localizers had to be brought on because the actors they were going to ask were on strike. They might be designed like NPCs, but they did a good job, by the way. The script was tighter, there was less fluff, and it got to the point more effectively than usual. Hoyoverse has to make the actors sound super invested and excited about what's going to be added to the game, which can sometimes sound cheesy. It was still somewhat cheesy, but that's fine. We kind of know what we're getting ourselves into because these human voices can be silly and expressive, not automated and artificial. See, these sort of things, they're not recorded the week before, mind you. It can take months, half a year, or longer between the recording to the distribution of the final game. And because of the structure of Genshin, because of the model it takes with regularly scheduled updates, these half-voiced scenes might continue for a while. From this point forward, if nothing changes, events in the game will continue to go partially voiced in English. Most of the cast voices the event that's happening right now, but the next one, I think only Paimon and just one other voice actor maybe will have recorded dialogue. That's going to be kind of painful because a lot of these characters are identified and iconic because of their voices. There's also some scenes that are unintentionally made funnier because of the situation. It's kind of a mess.
What was that? Laugh all you want, it's gonna eat you too!
In this case, however, you'll notice that some characters do have their voices while others do not. That could be because other voice actors are with companies that have signed an interim agreement with SAG-AFTRA. Or it could be timing and these voices were recorded right before the strike? I really can't be entirely sure at this point in time. The thing is, because of legal practices in the United States, the voice actors can't simply be replaced. I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, but employees who strike to protest an unfair labor practice committed by their employer are called unfair labor practice strikers. Such strikers can neither be discharged nor permanently replaced. When the strike ends, these unfair labor practice strikers, as long as they haven't performed any serious misconduct on their parts, are entitled to have their jobs back, even if employees hired to do their work have to be discharged. It's not as simple as, oh, just hire somebody new. There have been some unfortunate cases of voice actors that have had to be replaced in the past, but those were different situations entirely due to other kinds of misconduct. Granted, this might not affect as many games on release as you might think. The titles with a release date might get delayed until contracts and whatnot are figured out, but they will usually release with a fairly consistent quality. Genshin and other free-to-play regularly updated models don't have that luxury. It makes you think, or at least makes me think, take any of your favorite games that have the option to set the voice volume and just put it all the way down. Think of what Fire Emblem Three Houses would be if your favorite house had only half of its characters voiced. Or just any heavy story-based game that said, you know what, let's just try this game with AI voices. I don't foresee this sort of mindset ever happening in a Nintendo title, but there are a lot of companies who have openly expressed interest in experimenting with AI. There's just something about AI that replicates what a human can do, like art for example. It just looks and feels so, I don't know, oily? Gross and unnatural. If you use your senses hard enough, you can tell when something is artificial and not made by a human. And some companies, in their corporate greed, are relying on enough people to not use that common sense. How long until we have a completely AI-generated video game? Someone is going to try it eventually if they haven't already gotten a spotlight on it. And I don't mean to say all this like games and voice acting is doomed. In September, SAG-AFTRA had major news where 80 video games agreed to the union's AI terms. They are getting agreements signed, actors protected, and companies to realize that, yes, their voices belong to them. It's that simple, actually. They're not asking for higher pay or changes to their environments. Voice actors just want to not have their identity be stolen and used without consent. It sounds like common sense, and I'm sure that many of these companies who signed off thought so too. But it's the few, and especially the ones involved with huge titles like Genshin, that are causing such a stir. We're going to keep seeing more implications of this strike coming soon at this rate. And people are already talking about this one instance. People need to keep talking about it. They need to be aware that people who are trying to make a living, not just in voice acting, are having their jobs threatened by a computer. I don't think everyone is always fully aware of how powerful voice can make an impact on us. Just the other day, English voice actor Doc Harris sadly passed away. He was perhaps best known as the narrator for the original Ocean Studios English dub of Dragon Ball Z. Those who know the voice know it immediately. Next time on Dragon Ball Z! I would imitate that voice a lot, especially back then. And I can't imagine that being quite the same when generated artificially. You just cannot achieve that kind of depth without a human voice box performing it for you. And it's kind of scary to think that, I don't know, my sisters might start watching dubbed anime or playing games with AI voices. I have seen clips and snippets of video that have had an actor's voice created in AI, and then when someone tagged them to say, hey, this sounds a lot like you, she responded with, yes it does, because they used my voice without my consent. It's uncomfortable, and this affects all kinds of media. I haven't really spoken about AI for quite a while, but this is a case where it affects everyone involved, including us in the video game culture. Realistically, I don't think AI is 100% evil. It's definitely gotten a negative connotation now, but that's referring to very recent and specific uses of it. It's meant to do menial tasks that enhance human processes. I use an AI upscaler to increase the size of renders of characters that you see in thumbnails so that they don't look like pixelated garbage. I have used scripts in Photoshop to automate processes and to save multiple files in much less time than it would take me normally. Or I'll automate the filters and enhancements that I use for recording my voice for this very video. There is a place for it, but not one where it takes a creative person's jobs away. And I think that's it for this news update. I don't know, I saw something weird, I posted it, and it got a lot of attention. Oh my goodness, my phone is still getting notifications as I'm making this. I mostly wanted to bring awareness as somebody who has a lot of respect for voice actors and their craft. I hope that any game that you're looking forward to will not be affected by this. People have rights to their identity, their voice, and they just want protection and control over that. Just respect people's wishes, let them do their job, pay people, and we can all be happy at the end of the day and eat ice cream. If nothing else, please be respectful to others. This was not meant to shame anybody who doesn't know any better or to belittle those who prefer one language over another. We want to be fair, we want to be educated on the matter, and we just want people to be a bit more mindful. And that is all for now. Keep your eyes peeled for more news and updates right here on Good Vibes Gaming. Take care everyone, till we meet again.